I've been fortunate enough to meet with a group of industry leaders for a deep discussion on generative AI. We dove into the journey of building, deploying, marketing, and selling generative AI and LLM-based products, and explored topics such as prompt engineering, compliance, regulations, and responsibility. Let's jump in. Hello everyone, and welcome to RedisDays Generative AI panel. On their earnings calls earlier this month, Meta, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Amazon collectively dropped the term AI 168 times to excite their investors. ChatGPT has been the fastest growing app in history, gaining 100 million users in only 2 months of its launch. And you've heard about the astronomical spikes in search volumes in the AI session that we had earlier today with Tyler and Harrison. It is clear that we are at the beginning of a new era in tech that will surely affect other industries and more broadly us as a society. In our panel today, we'll meet 4 industry leaders that are in the forefront of defining, building, taking to market products powered by generative AI. Let me go ahead and introduce them to you now. First, Ryan J. Salva. Ryan is a VP of product at GitHub, and Ryan leads AI strategy at GitHub, where, among other things, his team built one of the first successful generative AI products, GitHub Copilot. Welcome, Ryan. Minaz Merchant. Minaz is a partner group manager, search and distribution web experience team at Microsoft. Minaz leads search efforts for Bing image and video products, the recommendation platform for multimedia content, and the new Bing image creator product built in collaboration with OpenAI DALL-E, and the crowd and ML platform for Microsoft for gathering and training data. Welcome, Minaz. Greg Aquilo. Greg is a product management leader, media and automation in Amazon. Greg owns the roadmap for AI-powered systems with human in the loop that automates and scales multimedia processing such as document and image classification. Last and not least, I would like to welcome Ken Priyadashi. Ken is a global text prompt engineer leader at Ernst & Young. Ken is currently focused on the infusing text application with Azure OpenAI. His thought leadership is focused on the CFO tax technology strategy and intelligent data mesh topologies for global and local tax apps. Important for me to call out that both Ken and Greg are representing their own opinions and not of any other organization. And with that, let's get started. Let's start with you, Minaz. Microsoft is an early mover in integrating AI into its products. Tell us how you identified the need for AI to be integrated into existing products like Bing, and what were some of the biggest challenges that you were facing as you were going through that process?
Thanks, Udi, for the introduction, and great to meet everyone on the panel, Ryan, Ken, and Ori. Yes, I work in Bing, as you said, and the exciting thing for us was that we at Microsoft got access to GPT-4 last fall from OpenAI. The model was capable of synthesizing, chatting, and creating. The GPT-4 model was trained at a given point in time, and that was a challenge. So that was one of our biggest challenges. And one of the first places we integrated was the new Bing chat experience, where we could provide results for prompts that were long, complex, and natural. So what we did is we used Bing search to provide the fresh and comprehensive results. In other words, we used the data for grounding before GPT-4 reasons over it. This gave us more accurate results, especially for fresh topics in the chat experience. We also found out that our chat, once we released it, we found out our chat users were very creative and were doing all kinds of innovative scenarios like generating stories. We thought, why not give them the ability to draw and create images for their stories right from the chat experience? So we integrated DALL-E directly into the chat experience. This was challenging as DALL-E works only in English, while GPT works in all languages. So we leveraged GPT to do the translation for us before submitting to DALL-E. This has been a great success, and we are able to share the new technology to users of over 100 languages. So this is how we have been integrating both the AI models, GPT and DALI, into our products.
Thank you, Minaz. You and I had an interesting conversation when we did the prep call last week, and you brought up the notion of bringing together artificial intelligence and human intelligence into the process. Can you take us through your thinking on human intelligence and how does it interact with AI and AI-infused processing?
So, human intelligence needs to complement artificial intelligence, and there are two main aspects here. One is responsible AI, which we are here at Microsoft take very seriously. It's critical that humans test the systems to ensure that these new models have no adverse impact on people, organizations, and society. These models need to be reliable, safe, secure, inclusive, and fair for the particular scenario. I was involved in extensive testing for DALI, and we did a lot of modifications to ensure safety and inclusivity. More work needs to be done, and we are learning and improving every day. So that's one aspect, responsible AI. The second aspect is we need to build systems in such a way that we know when to involve humans to either complement or validate a decision made by AI. For simple scenarios like traffic prediction, we can use the crowd, but for complex scenarios like health advice, we need domain experts. So that's what I meant by human intelligence. We should never rely completely on artificial intelligence and know when to get humans involved at the right time and to make this a successful partnership.
Thank you very much. I want to transition over to you, Ken. You have an interesting perspective coming from a very big player in the financial and particularly tax services space, Ernst & Young. Building AI into your tax products, how important is AI for your business?
Well, it's important to note that modern tax management, especially for Fortune 500 clients, increasingly resembles big data pipeline engineering. For example, use cases such as indirect tax often involve a complex mixture of financial, supply chain, and regulatory data from across hundreds of global jurisdictions. AI is strategically important to us because it enables our firm's human-at-center transformation strategy. Our goal for AI in tax is about empowering every tax practitioner and knowledge worker by augmenting them with co-pilots, domain-specific chatbots, and decision augmentation recommender systems. As a recent example, we collaborated with Microsoft and we used Azure OpenAI to create an intelligent payroll chatbot to empower our payroll care practitioners and clients. To summarize, we believe that our growing portfolio of tax domain-specific AI products will create higher client value, mitigate risks, and create and increase overall productivity. So I think we're on a mission to embed AI into our global tax platform and most of our strategic tax products.
Yeah. I can imagine the breadth of possibilities that AI opens. And I think that we talked so far a lot about the interface with AI capabilities from the user's perspective, but I want to turn our attention for a minute to architecture. So like in many other businesses, I'm sure that there were a lot of existing architectures that were in place. And then you want to come in and integrate AI capabilities into them. What does your architecture look like under the covers when you're trying to go through those integration efforts?
Sure. So to summarize, we collaborated with Microsoft AI, and at the heart of our architecture is Azure OpenAI. Now, we use a combined big data and AI Azure reference architecture from Microsoft underneath all our tax AI efforts. Our own differentiating elements and contributions are in establishing governance workflows that we have built in tax for operationalizing our responsible AI principles for all our clients. Now, as we continue to scale our AI workloads, architecture becomes more and more important And we're working with technologies such as Azure Redis and Redis Enterprise, particularly around vector similarity search. We increasingly like to think of Redis as an AI app layer, not just a cache, but an AI app layer in our architecture roadmap. So, I think it's a very exciting time in the Bay Area, if not the whole world, around new vector databases. But I think it's also a very exciting time around products that are embedding vector similarity searches directly into their stack. So, to summarize, we begin with the best practices from Microsoft, and then we partner to use the latest opportunities available to us to scale AI responsibly.
Ken, thank you very much for that. Ryan, I want to turn over to you now. So now that we've spoken about the challenges and some of the solutions integrating AI into existing products, given your experience at GitHub with Copilot, which is, I think, a net new product, what are some of the challenges that you face with bringing a new generative AI product to market? How did that go?
It's been a long journey, and I don't know how long have you got. We could talk about challenges for the next several hours here. Scale, performance are always and forever challenges, right? Really dialing in the quality of the responses that you're giving back to the humans, to the users, always and forever challenges. I'll give you some of the things that from a go-to-market perspective have been maybe unique about generative AI and Copilot. First and foremost, I would say here that, as we brought the product to market, the biggest concerns among adopters, it's not been, is this going to be useful? It hasn't been, do I want to integrate this into my workflow? And for anyone who's not familiar with it, GitHub Copilot is effectively a developer kind of tool that helps with writing new code, right? Every engineer that I talk to wants it on their machine yesterday. It's privacy, security, and legal. Those are the three top kind of adoption blockers that hit every organization that wants to bring it in there. And so there are a couple of different ways and a couple of different decisions that we made along the way that I feel have made our job easier, but that doesn't mean they weren't, challenging and sparked a lot of debate along the way. So on the privacy side of things, we decided early on that especially for enterprises, the way these models work, you have to send context, you have to send a prompt to the model, and then the model produces its response, and that displays out in the code editor. Well, every company's code assets, that's among their most cherished, most valuable assets that the company holds, right? These days, just about every company at its heart is a software company, whether they're technically known for software or they're known for their convenience stores or their tires or their cars or whatever. And so we made the decision early on that all of that context that we use to produce the response, the prompts, we would never ever retain it. We knew that customers would not want their software to be stored at rest. And so, we drew a hard line in the sand saying, we're just not going to retain that data, even though we, as many of us, data scientists, folks working in kind of the AI space, we know that data is oxygen, right? That is how you improve your product. And yet, if your customer does not trust that they can use your product without giving away their data, it's a no-go from the very beginning. And so that for us was a key decision point early on. Second, on the security side of things, we also knew that if we were not paying attention to how the data was protected in transit, how the data was actually, kind of managed once it was inside of our network where the software, where the service was being kind of executed, that equally there would not be any customer adoption. And so, yes, there's all the normal stuff about, are using RBAC and are using SSL, all the normal stuff that we as enterprises do. But for many customers, security means more than just how you're treating their data. It also means are you returning back responses that fit their expectation of a secure profile? I'll give you a hard example, right? Concrete example. developers are using this generative AI to write code. Well, if that code has security vulnerabilities in it, well, it's not really going to meet an enterprise's or developer's expectation of being a secure product. And so, on top of the responses produced by generative AI, we also run kind of post processing on top of the responses in order to analyze for potential security vulnerabilities like cross site scripting, SQL injection, and the like. We also run additional analysis to strip out things like secrets and tokens and PII because we know that an organization's, a developer's expectations of security, it's not just how you treat my data, it's how you treat the responses that you give back to the consumer and the user of it, right? And then last, I mentioned kind of legal, and this, obviously is tightly coupled with privacy and security. But on this side of things, I would say that I've spent a lot more time than I ever thought as a product manager, working with lawyers and legal teams to help kind of the community understand. And what I would say here is that we as an industry are still reckoning and still trying to understand exactly what generative AI is, how it can be used, where it's practical, what its risks are. If you think that we as like development professionals and engineering professionals are reckoning with it, lawyers and regulators and governments are spending a lot more time with their heads spinning trying to understand it. And so this has really been a campaign of education and partnership with our legal teams, our law teams, our regulators to help them kind of better understand what generative AI is, how it's used, what the actual risks are, and how we kind of recalibrate from the expectations that the media has created about AI being a somehow magical thing that, could both be wonderful and scary in a Terminator kind of way, but also like bringing that back down to reality and like, hey, this is just software, novel, wonderful, very cool software, but something that, with the appropriate safeguards in place is a tractable problem.
Yeah, and it is kind of typical, I think, for a new era in tech type of a challenge where suddenly you have a new major factor in your systems. And how do you actually recalibrate all the relevant ecosystems to support it? And the next one I want to actually talk to you about, Ryan, is when we think about all the aspects that you considered. Another one, of course, is ethical aspects. So you're definitely in what we could see as an arm race around AI between massive portions of the tech industry. And again, we talk about it, we can talk about it for hours, but how do you see or approach the potential ethical issues and concerns related to the place that we're in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Manaz and Ken have already talked about a lot of really great stuff already in terms of leveraging some of the principles of responsible AI. I think, a lot of the larger kind of tech companies like Microsoft and Google and AWS have spent time building frameworks for us to rationalize over this. If I were to just make it very practical, though, for a second, I mean, first and foremost, pardon me, excuse me. First and foremost, it's really like, remember, y'all, we're building tools, we're building products for humans, right? What really matters at the end of the day is what is the human impact that we are having with our technology. And for us, my product, GitHub Copilot, we, decided early on that we were going to build a product whose primary focus would be on unleashing the creativity of developers, helping them spend more time doing what they love, which I don't know, any of you who are on the call who are developers yourself, like I'm willing to bet you love building things. You love shipping software. You don't really love the labor of like going and looking up what the API was supposed to look like and doing copy paste from the documentation. You don't really love trying to like remember what a particular syntax was or how to write a regex. You want to create things. And so being really, really intentional about driving a particular human impact, finding ways to measure that human impact, and then constantly reevaluating with your customers to make sure that you're living up to that promise in a way that that is empowering to them, and also does not inadvertently not just like introduce bias, but like disempower other members of your community. And for us in GitHub, we have such a strong development community, which is to say, not just broad, but thankfully a vocal development community who is very clear about, what moral standards they're holding us to as, one of the homes, probably the home of open source software on the kind of around the globe. And so a lot of our work for the last several years here has been about listening to developers, hearing where, they feel like we could be better partners with them as we both leverage public data in order to create these models. And then again, when we return the service back to them. Let me give a very concrete example of this, right? One of the things that the open source community cares very much about is really about giving credit for their works, right? You write open source software, you put it out there, you want to see other people give you credit for that software, right? And that follows all sorts of different license types and things like that. Early on, what we decided to do is we decided to block every suggestion that even resembled public code because we didn't want any kind of whiff or suggestion of, someone even accidentally borrowing someone else's IP. And in a lot of ways, that was a great solution, but it also meant that people who were creating software weren't also getting credit for things that, they got published even incidentally or accidentally out of the models. And so the next evolution of that, as we've listened to developers more and more, has been, okay, rather than just block everything, can we say when these models, as the giant probability machines that they are, even incidentally reproduce code that resembles code that's out there in the public, can we cite that? Can we say, hey, you know what? Similar code is found in these repositories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are governed by these different licenses. If you want to learn from other people's implementation of a similar problem, great. Go check out those repositories, learn from them. If you want to take a dependency so that you're not necessarily introducing, business logic to your own application where someone else has solved the problem, great. Take that dependency. Or if you just want to give credit to someone because they wrote code that's kind of like what you're writing, you can then put that into your application. And so making sure that you're serving your customers and not just thinking about, how do I solve a cool technology problem using generative AI?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ryan. Great perspective, and I think it's a good transition over to you, Greg. So we talked a lot about the different aspects of how and where this technology really meets our professional lives. And I think that through your work, you've been exposed to different types of professionals trying to get their heads around what it means for them. How is AI affecting them as technical professionals, and what's the best way for them to become more productive in doing their jobs in their respective spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'd like to say that those are things that are already happening. As Ryan mentioned, his team working with products such as Copilot that are where developers are already using these tools to generate 50% plus of their code. I remember when tools such as this started to come into the market, people were excited to discover things such as what to code. They could just put a prompt in, and then the tool would spit out a specific code that they were looking for, and they were impressed. Actually, what I would like to see going forward is where developers are using tools like this to figure out how to code. For example, how to decide on the right programming language given a certain use case, or how to leverage a design principle or an architectural framework, and other things more tactical, such as how to design unit testing, how to perform code review automation, where you have these tools performing these code reviews for them and flagging weaknesses in the code, even especially boilerplates. So those are the real things that they want to get rid of, so they can have more time on their hands. So boilerplate codes, how do you reduce that? And also, what I can think about is how to capture security flaws, and also tackling tech debt. The one thing I'm super excited about as well, when it comes to tools like this, is how to leverage it for improving communication, especially communication between uh, technical and non-technical teams, and that's becomes very important in bridging the gap of communication between the two teams. Oftentimes, we have business leaders or non-technical who don't have the patience to understand what's going on the other side of the aisle. And tools like this can be used to be more creative, be more simple, leverage layman terms to make sure that both teams are on the same page, and working on the same goal. So at the end of the day, what we'll see with these productivity tools, is that companies will start hiring less, but you'll see a situation where one software engineer will be worth the output of 2 to 3. And that's how I think organizations and companies across the board will become more productive leveraging these tools.
Great, thank you. And I think this is a good segue for me, Greg, to talk about considerations for people that are driving technology strategies into their respective businesses. The set of options that they need to consider around those large language models that are substantiating a lot of those AI capabilities are build versus subscribe versus buy. Specifically, the decision that I need to make is, do I build it from scratch? Do I subscribe to something like a GPT-4 service? Or do I take an open source model off the shelf and then using that as a starting point in order to build what I need to build? What is your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely something that business leaders are still scratching their heads on. But for the sake of this situation here, to talk about the trade-offs, first of all, I'm going to assume that before you arrive at whether to build or from scratch or leveraging an open source, I will assume that the use cases are fully identified, the real customer needs are validated to mandate the use of an LLM, for example. I can summarize the trade-offs to different specific categories. What I can come up with in mind are budget, time, policies such as around data, around other business policies, the cost, and then performance. I'll go lightly across these sections. So let's talk about budget, for example. If you want to build an LLM from scratch, you want to build a hundreds of billions of parameters model, you will need certain budget. And if I think about companies like in Flexion AI, who just came up with a model, a conversational model called Pi, they were injected with $225 million. Even Dolly, that was created by Databricks, the effort, the cost, the budget wasn't low as well. So you can tell where budget can be a limiter there. Let's move on to something like policy. When I think about policy, if a company is thinking about privacy, they have proprietary data they don't want to share. They have concerns about connecting to an API where their data may be exposed. Maybe they have security concerns and access control, and even technology control. When I think about leveraging an API from a third party, if that third party decides to cease to serve a certain region, such as in Europe, how does that affect your business, right? But however, if you build it from your end, from your open source, you have your own technology, you have more control on the roadmap, you have more control on the expansion of that technology, etc. Other constraints, other trade-offs to consider. Time, let's not forget, when we're building these technologies, you have to build, train, evaluate, test, and deploy. So depending on your capacity, you may do this slowly or fast, depending on your goals, on your vision, etc., in alignment with the key objective results of your business. Another constraint that I can think about is cost. And when I think about cost, is training cost of your machine learning model, There are different ways of training, whether it's training from scratch with your proprietary data set if you want to train a domain-specific model. You have fine-tuning techniques that you can use. You have reinforcement learning, human feedback, different techniques for different costs. And then you have the computing cost of training as well. You have the computing cost of inference. You have the cost of the full-time employees. If you're building something from scratch, you have to be able to afford highly skilled data scientists. If you want to fine-tune models, you have to be able to pay prompt engineers, etc. Other things you have to think about too is cost of infrastructure. Let's move on away from cost. Lastly, you have performance. When I can think about performance, there's latency, accuracy, efficiency. So around efficiency, you can think of a large language model versus a small language model. A small one that is domain specific may be more friendly to modern nature. And then for accuracy, you may see that foundational model may not be that accurate. You need to fine tune it a little bit. And then for latency, something like ChatGPT has very high, low latency, and which may be able to be the best solution for your needs depending on your use cases. So those are the things that I can think about. If you map these out very well, you should be able to make a decision. But this is definitely an effort that needs to be taken between business leaders who are non-technical versus business leaders who are technical, so we can move forward.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That was very condensed and concise. So let's go to the last round of questions. One that is going to be the same question, and I will ask each and every one of you to provide your take on that topic. We talked a lot about what we see right now. We talked a little bit about other aspects like risk, like cost, immersion into existing professional fronts, and the impact on us as a society. I want us to raise our eyes a little bit and look a little bit deeper into the future. What do you see as new opportunities and challenges emerging in the near future? And again, I don't think we could look very far into the future because this wave is changing at an amazing pace. Nothing that we've seen ever before. But just looking at the near future, the next, I would say, 12 to 24 months. What role do you see generative AI playing in shaping products and services of tomorrow? Let's start with you, Minaz.
Thank you. Yeah, I think 12 to 24 months is a long period. I will say that in this era, in this space, but I agree that we have just scratched the surface. I think one of the major opportunities going forward is that these models are just not going to be language models. They're going to be multimodal. They will understand text, images, and videos. So that's one trend. It's going to happen, and it's going to happen very quickly. The second one is that education is just going to be democratized. Every student will have access to the best teacher. I feel like that's awesome, and that's going to happen very fast. The third trend I see is that in ecosystems are going to be built around each of these large models. All these companies are going to have some large models, and they're going to have ecosystems around them, and they will be able to do task completion. And so those are the three trends which I see, which will happen very rapidly and quickly. The challenges biggest challenge is how we tackle misinformation. We need to make the models robust and provide abilities to cross-check information. And as I said before, we need to able to connect to the human side and most importantly, the domain experts, so they can give their view and you're not just relying just on AI to make all your decisions. So I think that is the biggest challenge we have at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much. Ken, over to you.
Well, I think things are moving very fast. When it comes to challenges and risks, I'll go back to making sure that whatever we do as an industry, we do so with governance and responsible AI principles as part of a very strong operationalization strategy. I don't think of ethical AI or responsible AI as a set of principles as much as actually code-enforced operationalization capabilities that every organization needs to adopt and be serious about and not just talk about them. I think the future to me is exciting because I feel like enterprise AI is finally becoming mainstream. And I strongly believe that, within the next 5 years, from finance to supply chain, from HR to legal and more, we're going to see embedded intelligence almost inside every enterprise application. And so that comes obviously with these new risks and these governance protocols that we need to establish as large enterprises. So exciting, but also cautious.
Right, 100%. Ryan, let's hear what you have to add to the points that Ken was making.
Yeah, first a big +1 to everything that Ken and Manaz had to say. Well put, both of you. Maybe I'll tackle it from a slightly different angle, and I'll look at kind of where are the opportunities rather than where are the challenges and the risks. I think they've done a really great job capturing those. So first, there's a lot of white space out there. Like we're at the moral equivalent of 2009 with the iPhone or 1999 with kind of web and e-commerce. Like there is so much opportunity out there. If I was really thinking about where, if I were doing a startup, doing a new business kind of thing, and thinking about where might I apply generative AI and truly be differentiated, right? There are a couple of different categories that I would think about. First, can you differentiate with, well, I'll put this in scare quotes, the normal enterprise features that folks expect everywhere else? So that can often be in like highly regulated environments or with special certifications and things like that. Second, if when employing generative AI, you can differentiate through some kind of proprietary data, right? Any organization that has access to, data that no one else has access to, that is data that you can feed to the prompts that you can use for fine tuning in order to generate truly novel responses. And so that's kind of the other place. Third, I really believe here that I'll call it IP defense is another important category here. As these models generate new content, a lot of organizations are going to be concerned about generating truly unique content and generating something that is one of a kind and not merely a mirror or reflection of the training data. And so the organizations who can really master bringing unique content to bear and making sort of validating that will have an advantage. And then kind of last here, I would say really around the kind of the area of price and channel efficiency. This is like a classic business model problem, but if you can get to market more quickly, like I said, we're in a little bit of a gold rush time, 1999, 2009. I think many of us have lived through that moment and know what that's like. As well as like these models are at a moment where they are still, well, they're probably at the most expensive they will ever be, just from a kind of like a newness perspective, right? And so those organizations that can realize pricing and channel efficiency are likely to be differentiated.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. And let's close with you, Greg.
Well, for me, I look at it on a different layer of the technology. First off, I can start with the infrastructure layer. What I'm excited about there in the near future is how we are developing customized AI chips that can perform, neuromorphic computing, things that imitate the way the brain functions. You also have any sort of infrastructure that allows you to perform data parallelism, pipeline parallelism, tensor parallelism to really help with the efficiency of models. We know the bigger the model, the bigger the volume of data that you have to feed it. You have to make sure you have the right representation of data. And if you want to make sure that you can compute efficiently, you have to have the supporting infrastructure to do this. And I do believe that by these infrastructure deliverables, making these models a little bit more efficient, you'll have the access to these LLMs improved, where smaller companies can access these models better. at a more affordable price. And then on the second side, you have at the model level where I'm excited to see where these language models can be used as orchestrators, where they can plan the work and then they have connections to different APIs. We're starting to see that it's going to be increased a little bit better. There's a tool called Task Matrix that is a platform that allows you to do that, calling multiple APIs or smaller models, where the foundational model plans the task and is able to call different machine learning models such as computer vision and other NLP tasks to be performed. Think of a robot that can help you in the kitchen that has a plan to perform different tasks to help you with dinner or breakfast, etc. And then lastly, I'm excited about the opportunity to bring large language models to devices. As users, we want to be able to leverage these technologies and be able to improve our lives. So it's going to be kind of like, are we going to have a small electric bill by leveraging these features within these LLMs, maybe to improve our health, et cetera, through apps. And maybe they will deploy it through some sort of federated learning practice. So I'm really excited about that. Real-time processing here is the big opportunity. And these opportunities are also challenges. I didn't mention that, but I think they're both. At the end of the day, generative AI will continue to be the tool that is used to build technology, but also the tool that is used as a feature within technology, right? So this is why I think AI is both the innovation and the innovation enabler.
Excellent, great answer. And I couldn't think of a better ending than taking a look from the outside about the qualities of generative AI. We're getting to the end of this panel. I truly appreciate each and every one of you providing your very deep and unique perspective on this hot topic and the panel today. I think we've provided a pretty good insight to many aspects, and a lot of us and many of our listeners today are trying to get their heads around. I definitely have many new questions coming out of the discussion we had with the panelists today. And I think we had a very good starting point with the question that we've discussed to have our listeners to wrap their heads around, what their respective roles needs to be in better preparing for the AI arms race. I want to, one last time, thank our panelists today, Ryan, Manaz, Greg, and Ken, for being a part of that panel. And to all of you that joined us, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Manaz, Ken, Ryan, and Greg. What a humbling experience. Being part of this panel with each and every one of you was illuminating, and I appreciate you sharing your expertise and experience with us.